Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Dionne Sinclair. I am the Vice President, Clinical Care and Chief Nurse Executive at the Center for Addictions and Mental Health. You will notice on your program that it says I'm going to be talking about unconscious bias. And it is true, I will be mentioning unconscious bias. However, I'm going to go upstream and try to unpack why we have these biases. And I'm going to just be very honest and blunt. We all have biases. Even myself. I know, shocking, but even me, I have biases. A little bit about myself. I know, take a good look at all those pictures. I came to Canada from Jamaica, 1976. And the top left picture is of myself and my brother. This was grade 5, Trafalgar Public School in London, Ontario. Below that is my graduating class for my RPN program in 1986. And if you look closely, you'll see 2 black faces in that class. Not that relevant, but that was London, Ontario in 86. Not too bad. I'm sharing this picture just to share a little bit about myself. I want people to know I am a nurse. And my superhero is in the middle of the top slide. That's my mom, so I'm a daughter. Below, on the bottom right corner, you'll see my girls. So I'm a mom, and you'll see my dad with a very old picture. That's myself, my brother, and my sister. So I am a sister as well. Also a graduate, because schooling is something I do often. And the 2 pictures in the middle on the bottom there, I was in Army Cadets for a very long time. I've got a commission scroll, so there might be people out there that have been in Army Cadets. And the one with the straight hair, there's a funny story about that one. That's me trying to assimilate with wigs or weaves. Back in the day when I was trying to get manager positions, I literally had to change who I am. Not change, but adapt, so that I felt I could fit in. And that will come and be more relevant in a little bit. So that's a little bit about myself. Hopefully there are some nurses, moms, or daughters there, or sisters that can relate. So today we're going to talk about inclusive leadership. Why? Well, I've been in healthcare for a while. I've gotten over 16 years of leadership, so it's something that I do know well. So I'll talk about unconscious bias regarding leadership. I'm also going to talk about the intercultural development inventory, the core concepts. And those concepts are denial, polarization, minimization, acceptance, and adaptations. And then we can discuss, when we do question and answers, what steps do you take when you're going through those stages. So the first thing we're going to talk about, leadership. When it comes to taking a look at diversity, equity, inclusion, looking at where biases are, leaders are the ones who set the tone from the top when it comes to diversity and inclusion. The executive team, they model the behavior and they provide diversity and inclusion messaging for an organization, and they offer guidance on how to meet those goals, and they address causes of inequities. So one of the questions I always say is, how can a leader address cause of inequities if they don't know what inequities are? Leaders are also the ones who assist with removing systemic barriers. Again, depending who your leader is, do they know what a systemic barrier is? And yes, it will make more sense soon when we talk about uncovering those biases and who has the biases. So a little bit about the intercultural development inventory, the core concepts. You have to understand culture, and culture is the foundation, is the starting point of all intercultural efforts. So you do have to try and understand each other. It's the most difficult concept to find widespread agreement on, yet it is central to everything. And there's the reference. The Intercultural Development Inventory is a premier cross-cultural assessment intercultural competence that is used by thousands of individuals and organizations to build intercultural competence to achieve international and domestic diversity and inclusion goals. And I'm going to go a little bit more into how they achieve those goals. So first, I want to talk about 2 types of cultures, objective and subjective. For most of you, I did mention earlier when you saw my pictures, I am Jamaican. And if you know anything about Jamaican, you know something about our food. So people will know jerk chicken or Jamaican patties, right? Music, something you can see again or hear. Reggae music, who doesn't know reggae music? The language, we do have our own broken English that we speak, visual arts, performing arts, Bob Marley. And one thing a lot of people know about Jamaicans, the island has some of the fastest, or does have the fastest, men and women in the world, right? And so sometimes you can make an assumption that all Jamaicans are fast, which I would say yes, but we know that's not true. That's a judgment. We're not going to go there right now. However, what do you know about Jamaican values? What do you know about the etiquettes that are on the island? What do you know about the thought process? How do we make decisions? Or the concept of fairness when it comes to Jamaican? Those are subjective, cultural values. And sometimes what happens is you only see what's on the surface. You don't know what's underneath. And so what you need to do is get to know someone to understand what's underneath. So here is something I'm going to do for everyone. If you're in Canada, this is just for the Canadians who are thinking, well, I don't have jerk chicken or the reggae music, Bob Marley, we're not that fast. Here's something about Canadian cultures I want to give to everyone. Canadians, you're progressive, you're diverse, and you're multicultural. Democratic and respect for human rights. That's something Canadians do well. Inclusive, welcoming, 2 official languages, but there are 60 indigenous languages and over 200 other languages. Lands where dreams can come true, and there's respect for human rights. Value people of all cultural ages, religion, abilities, and talents. We're working on it. We are working on it. And there are shared values: openness, respect, compassion, willingness to work hard, and be there for each other. These are Canadian values which I took from this, I should have written it down, 1 page. However, Canada is working on the respect for human rights because we heard earlier from Jesse Wente about Indigenous rights. So here it is, the intercultural development continuum and how it ties into unconscious bias. The continuum is a framework that shows you how you have your mindset. And it is a developmental framework, so you grow through it just like children grow through developmental stages. And the first stage is denial. It's a very not that complex stage, and the great news about denial is only 3% of the population sits in denial. Polarization is exactly what it says, 2 opposite sides. Black versus white, north versus south. Great news about polarization, there's only about 27% of the population that sits in polarization. Minimization is where the majority sits, 66% to be exact. And in minimization, you hear about they don't see color. And in minimization, let's just all get along. We're going to expand on that soon. Acceptance is where you have a more complex way of looking at different cultures. It is a more open mindset where you can be accepting of cultural differences, you're accepting of innovative ideas, you accept different perspectives. And then adaptation, again, even more complex, where you're actually able to change your behavior in order to adapt temporarily to any given situation. So this is that framework, and we're going to just expand on the framework. Denial is the first one. And cultural differences may appear chaotic, bewildering, and you prefer to interact with members of your own group. I had pictures here, I'll admit, but I figured they would trigger someone, because one of the examples of denial is 100 years ago when settlers came to this land where I'm standing right now. They denied the indigenous population their identity. There was a law passed with residential schools where they would literally take children from their families, put them in these schools to strip away their culture, their music, their language, their dances, everything. And people in denial, they have an inability to see differences. They want you to assimilate. Avoid topics of race or racism because really, it's only their way. They don't see anything outside of their own frame of reference, being very indifferent to anything else. So that's where you have a whole population very indifferent to indigenous population and very oblivious to culture. They can't find anything in common. Therefore, they don't build relationships. When an organization is in denial, issues of diversity and inclusion, race and racism are likely to be ignored due to a one-size-fits-all. You hear, this is the way we do things around here. And why do we have to think about doing things differently? Best practices are traditions. And when you think about unconscious bias, when you're in this organization in denial, remember there's not that many places in denial, the biases are very obvious because I'm black, so I must be, well, I say Jamaican, you're fast. You must be loud. You must be maybe not so intelligent because, again, when this culture is in denial, they're oblivious to anything that is different than their own. So the learning focus for when somebody's in denial, you have to increase their awareness to racial and other visible cultural differences, increase the ability to notice cultural differences. And so one of the things is you go traveling, you try new foods, you watch different sports. And one of the things I've encouraged people to do is go watch a cricket match. Yes, there is such a sport, cricket. And then an international potluck. One of the easiest ways for someone in denial to test out and see and learn about other cultures. And it's non-threatening. You're not forcing anything on anyone. You're just encouraging them to try something new. And the developmental question is, can I begin to see other cultures and customs as very much as rich as my own? And so again, food, art, language, music, sports, you have to bring people just to that point. In denial, you can't bring them all the way to acceptance or adaptation. It is a developmental stage. The best you can do is get them to the next stage, which right here is polarization. And I know that's a dramatic picture. I've only used it for dramatic effect. Polarization, diversity and inclusion are likely seen as problems and obstacles, especially by the dominant culture. It's us versus them. And if you try to give anyone in polarization facts, they will call it fake news. And polarization defense is us versus them. We are better than them. And there's a polarization reversal where it's us versus them, but they're better than us. People will say, you know what, Jamaicans, they've got the best cultures. I have no culture. They've got the best food, best music, and ours is blah. Like that. That's polarization reversal. There are explicit stereotypes, extreme hate groups, white supremacy, strong judgment of others, perceiving them as a threat. And there's an overemphasis of differences and they don't find anything in common. And differences are also considered negative. And we're better than you, and you're a threat to my way of life. And underneath all that, anger is fear of losing power, losing privilege, and losing control. This is where I will tell the story when it comes to unconscious bias. With those judgments comes the biases. So, story about me getting this job as a director in Ottawa, being very excited, going into the office early because, again, I went and got the badge. I got the key to my office. It's the weekend. I'm going to go tidy up, clean up. That's something I do. Just so Monday morning I would be prepared. So I went off, and I think there was an announcement that the new director is coming, but I think someone didn't get the memo. I'm in my office. I am Windexing, and I'm wiping down surfaces. I'm thinking about where I'm going to put all my certificates. And somebody comes, knocks on the door, looks in, and says, when you're done in there, could you come empty the garbage in my office? And I look up. They didn't ask a question. I don't even think they made eye contact. It's just, when you're done in there. And it's like, oh, So there's an assumption that I'm in here cleaning, I'm black, I must be environmental services, which there's nothing wrong with that. However, I actually went and I emptied the garbage next door when I was done. I did it for effect because Monday morning, the VP brought me and introduced me to my team. And sure enough, one of my team members who told me when I'm done in there was sitting there now looking ghostly white. And I just smiled and I said, "Oh, I remember you. I met you yesterday." It turns out she didn't stay around long. However, when it comes to, that wasn't even an unconscious bias. It was just making an assumption and making a judgment with stereotypes, because if you're in polarization, there isn't much complexity in how your mindset works. It is very judgmental and have explicit stereotypes. When you come across an organization that's in polarization, and I'm talking to you from organization, that's what I know best, you have to find commonalities where people think none exist. You do team building exercises to support and discover shared needs and goals, and you tell stories. Just like I told that story earlier, somebody out there listening might have similar stories, where the dominant group, they see themselves in the story. When I shared my pictures, this is where I'm coming back to, there are nurses out there who are not black. And they go, "Oh yeah, I'm a nurse too." There are moms out there with girls, and they know how girls can, have messy rooms sometimes. And it's like, oh yeah, we have that in common. So you tell stories to someone in polarization. You definitely do not give them any facts, because remember I said that's fake news. And that's where some organizations, when they bring in sensitivity training and they wonder why half the people walk away from the training even more upset than when they came in, because they might be in a polarization mindset and they're not ready for facts. They're ready just to hear stories, get to learn and build relationships, and you can move them along. So the developmental question is, how do I find something in common between me and them? And how do I uncover my own prejudices, my own bigotries, my own biases? And uncovering your own biases, you need to really self-reflect. One of the biggest ways you can do that is you're talking to someone, and this is an example I heard recently. It's like, well, why don't those young black men getting killed by police, why don't they just listen? And so with somebody in this mindset, you ask them, well, how do you experience police pulling you over? Especially if they're white, in the dominant culture, what's their experience when police pull them over? And have them process that, talk you through what's happening with them. Because then you can share, well, I have a very different experience if the police pulls me over. Myself, I just make sure everything is in order, because I want no reason for them to pull me over. Minimization, again, I mentioned this is where the majority of the population is, and you want people from all races to be treated equally from their own lens of equality. So we do want, this is the golden rule. Do unto others what you want done unto yourself. So you value equality. You want to find commonalities, you're comfortable with differences, super accepting and tolerant, respectful, and people in minimization will say they don't see color at all. There's overemphasis on what we all have in common, and you think you've arrived. And you protect values because you project values onto people as if those are universal values. So we all should, go out Fridays after work for drinks. I know it's COVID times, we're not doing that, but those are values. Well, I go for drinks on Fridays, so why can't so-and-so? You project your behavioral standards onto people. So whatever you believe you're doing, well, everyone should be able to do that. You lack cultural self-awareness, and some racial groups, and that's me with the wig and the straight hair that you saw in my pictures, you minimize your own racial difference trying to fit in. So what happens when an organization's in minimization? They say they care about diversity, but the organization is not as inclusive as it can be. They've got a great equity statement, but you don't see any examples of diversity, say, in their leadership. They recruit for diversity, but they onboard for similarities due to an emphasis on comfort and fit. So-and-so, yes, they look different, but they need to be the right fit. And the right fit is whatever everyone else is doing, and if you don't fit in, then, they just weren't the right fit. It's okay for you to look different if you are as much alike as possible. They don't no longer stereotype groups, but the oppression is personal and at a cultural level. So what can happen is, I'm new to the organization, I'm Black, I'm myself, I've got my locks, and I'm very confident. And it's like, oh, that Dionne, she's just not like so-and-so. You know, so-and-so was just like us. She went to lunch with us. She wouldn't be in our office all the time. She wouldn't stay late and make us look bad. And all of a sudden, it's very personal. You're just not the right fit. It doesn't matter if you're qualified, competent, capable. Again, organizations and minimization, it's similarities. They emphasize for comfort and fit. Just the way they do things around here. The non-dominant staff, they leave a part of themselves at the door. Like myself, I had lots of wigs. They were really good looking wigs, by the way. And you go along to get along. I don't know if anyone out there actually have gone through that or have experienced that. And other non-dominant cultures may experience a pressure to assimilate. So if everyone in the executive team gets up and run in the morning and you're the one that doesn't, it's like, oh, I better start running, because a lot of discussions happens on the run, lots of decisions get made on the run, and you want to fit in. So diversity hiring, you have to intentionally include, or you are unintentionally excluding. And that's one of the things I will bring out many times, that yes, you do need diversity in an organization. However, diversity isn't everything. Because if you're in the organization and you don't feel valued, you don't feel appreciated, you don't feel like you belong, it's just a number. So there has to be inclusion, equity that goes along with it. Minimization. So your learning focus, increase your cultural self-awareness. When you want to minimize your biases, because we all do have them, like I said, increase your cultural self-awareness. You want to minimize your unconscious bias, you have to manage your feelings of guilt and emotional discomfort and anxiety in dealing with issues of racism and other forms of oppression. You literally have to sit and self-reflect. What are my values? What are my expectations? Am I projecting my values onto anyone else? And developmental question is, how do I learn to see what I currently don't see? Because you're not going to walk around just with your judgments or just with the stereotypes. How do I take responsibility for my own identity and my own cultural lens? And you have to, in organizations, deconstruct oppressive policies, because the systemic barriers are built into some of those policies. And you have to look at policies and procedures and see where the white dominant culture is embedded. A lot of times you'll see that in all the credentials. Someone literally has to have a PhD to get a position in a lower level, and it's like, why is that? Not everyone goes out and gets a PhD or a master's degree. Take a look at what those policies and procedures are saying. So here's acceptance. Remember what I said about the minimization being the golden rule? In acceptance, we call it the platinum rule. Platinum rule says you do unto others what they would like done. I'm going to say that again. Acceptance, it's a platinum rule. You go past the golden rule. You do unto others what they would like done. You recognize cultural patterns and you're able to see them in context. You have to build relationships and you are curious. You appreciate and value differences. See the difference there? You see differences in minimization. You don't value them, you don't really appreciate them. Here you do appreciate and you value them. You see others from their own perspective. So yes, Dionne is confident and boisterous and she's got a lot of energy. People will say that. You find race and other forms of culture interesting yet challenging. And cognitively, you're ready to understand data about structural racism. So here, I can give you data on police brutality against blacks or indigenous population. Whereas if you're in polarization, that data would be, again, spun as fake news or told to me in their perspectives. An example of that is when, well, it still happens now, police brutality on black bodies in the States. CNN would say, the police have shot 59% more black males versus white. And Fox News would say the police shot 59% more black males because they're criminals. Same data. Very different way of presenting it. So you have to know who you're giving that data to. Someone in minimization and acceptance, they can understand the data. Someone in denial or polarization, no. You're telling stories and you're getting them just to the next level. 20 to 30% of the population, they're ready to hear the information. All right, and despite understanding racial injustice, you're less likely to act on it because you're stuck. It's like, I know this is wrong. I know I need to do something, but what can I do? I'm one person. So they call this analysis paralysis. And something similar might have happened to you when with indigenous populations, they're finding all those bodies in residential schools, in graveyards. It's like, it's wrong, it's an injustice. What can I do? And you're looking for something to do. So what is your learning focus? You need to develop some confidence and humility to lean into the complexity. Try and find out more, learn more, understand more, ask questions. Learning culturally specific information coupled with practical applications. So what can you do? You need to talk to someone and gain more information. And you have to maintain ethical commitment in the face of relativity. You can do something. Let me just say that. And your developmental question, can I trust what I've learned? Am I willing to take risks and integrate a practice to learn from my mistakes? And the oppression-related focus is you have to educate yourself about unconscious bias and discriminatory treatment, unequal opportunities, and anti-Black, anti-Indigenous racism. With unconscious bias, it's your mindset. Where are you at? How complex is your thinking? Great example I heard again from Newa. He said, you can be in a polarization mindset, and that is your mindset. Your mindset is super strong. And you have a skill set, say, of curiosity. So your curiosity tells you to ask questions. And you might meet someone like myself, and you say, hey, where are you from? And I say, from London, Ontario. No, where are you really from? It's like, I lived on Egerton Street. No, where are your people from? Someone would say, that's unconscious bias. I'm telling you that is someone who's curious, that's his skill, but they're in a polarization mindset. So they're not that complex with the question. Now, I could be offended, probably would be. However, I can meet that person where they're at. It's like, why are you asking that question? What are you trying to achieve? It's like, no, I just want to know. Meeting them where they're at is one of the best ways. Ask some questions, be curious about them and what their intentions are. More chances are they are just that. They are curious, but they're sitting in one of these less complex mindsets, and they need to grow into minimization. So again, what I mentioned about someone in polarization, you can tell stories, you can do some team building, you can meet them where they're at, but share about yourself and say, find some commonalities. What do you have in common? Adaptation is our last and most complex. temporary behavior shift made in order to be more effective in each situation. So cultural differences, when you're coming across someone, you're in adaptation, differences are very obvious, and you're responsive to subtle nuances, and you're very flexible. You can pivot, you can change depending your circumstance, and you more accurately predict behavioral outcomes. And how do you shift your behavior to be effective? Example of this in adaptation, if I was going to a mosque and they said, well, you have to cover your head and all the women sit in a section at the back. In adaptation, guess what? I'll show up with my headscarf, put it over my head, and yes, I'll be sitting where the women are sitting. No, I won't say, well, I'm a confident Canadian, I should be able to sit wherever. Adaptation, temporary behavioral shift made in order to be more effective in each situation. Wouldn't have been so effective if I'm just charging forward in this mosque where I'm a guest and a visitor. You're likely to challenge systemic and institutional and structural racism. So in adaptation, you will challenge, and you want change, and you're willing to take risks to change things about yourself and about the organization. You're doing something, and you're willing to make the change, and you're not sure how it will turn out, but you'll learn and you'll adapt. And you may become tired and fatigued, especially with those that are not in where you are, because you're wondering, well, how come they can't see what you're seeing? I like this quote from the Dalai Lama: our prime purpose in life is to help others, and if you can't help them, at least don't hurt them. So in adaptation, you have to be very clear about your goals. You're managing and pacing frustration and exhaustion. So in adaptation, you want to change the whole world. You're seeing things very clearly. You see things that need to be changed, but you got to pace yourself, because I've been told you can't boil the ocean, which is very true. You have to apply a power analysis. So again, I look at organizations that say they really care about diversity, they care about equity and inclusion, and it's like, that's good. Show me your leaders. Show me your decision makers. Show me where you spend and invest in others, and I'll tell you how much you care about diversity, equity, and inclusion. It's that simple. So you practice shifting your skills, integrate learning into concrete action. So if you care about diversity, equity, and inclusion, I always say, how many Black leaders do you have? How many Indigenous leaders do you have? We'll start there, and then you can work from there. Your developmental question is, what's your goal? What is your role in relation to the goal, and what do you do without losing your soul? And learning about your interactions between institutions, policies, practices, cultures, and history can support systemic inequity. How does this tie into unconscious bias? I hope some of it is relatable. You're in a lower mindset where it's denial or polarization. You're coming at it from your own lens, from what's under the surface of that iceberg that I showed earlier. Those are the values you have, your opinions, your upbringing, your family. It could be, I grew up in a small town. Everyone looked like me, everybody talked like me, everyone sounded like me. This is the way we saw things. So it's very hard if you are not going out and meeting new people, trying new foods, traveling. And you don't have to travel. You can actually just go watch a foreign film. There is a much bigger, broader world out there for you to explore. So I don't know if this is going to work, but I'm going to try it. There's some people in the room. They're going to indulge me. I want everyone listening to take a look at these social identification categories. Yes, I know. Trust me, I'm not a magician, but this is going to work. I want you to pick out 5 of them. Yes, I'm talking to you on the screen. I know you're sitting there going, Dionne, me? Yes, you. 5? You got your 5? Nod. We're ready. Okay, they got 5. All right, now I want you to take away 2 of those categories. And yes, out there, I want you to take away 2 of them as well. It might be hard, might not, but just cross out 2. You had 5, 2 of them. Okay? You got 2 of them? I want you to cross out 1 more. So now you're only left with 2. Those are 2 really important things to you. Yeah? See, I'm not a magician, but I know those 2 that are left, really super important to you. So go ahead, cross out 1 more. I know, this is tough. Which one and why? Oh, they're not happy with me. Yes, take 1 away, now you're left with 1. Now, you don't have to tell me which one you're left with. And I hope you were playing along because it's a small exercise, but it's an exercise that tells you what's really important to you. And I bet you the one that's left gives you the most joy. And you're so proud of it, but can also give you the most frustration and the most stress. Yep. Oh, people are nodding. So here it is. When you think about, say, new immigrants are coming to this country, and we tell them, no, your education doesn't matter. Gender, well, no. Profession, your citizenship, religion, sexual orientation, nationality, language, race, you're saying those things won't matter. We're only looking at, I don't know, economic level. So if you have money, we'll, welcome you in, which sometimes does happen. All right? So when you're taking things away that are very important to people, it can have that same visceral effect when I told you to cross things out. All right? So we all had these to look at, and this is just a random sample of social identification categories. I identify with a lot on that list, and I always end up with race. And it's like, Dionne, you're black. People can see your race. Why is race so important? It is so important because, again, it gives me a lot of joy. It gives me a lot of pride. But some days it's frustration and stress because I keep having to explain things to others. Does that make sense? I'm not getting rid of it, though. So let's see. That's it. My contact information is here. I am also the founder of the Canadian Black Nurses Network. I don't think I mentioned that in the beginning. And I guess it's now time for questions. So one of the first questions, what unlikely workplace decision can be affected by unconscious bias? Oh, absolutely. Hiring. When you're in HR, and you have these resumes that are coming in, and you see John Smith and Susie, Brown, and Makembe Mutombo. Oh, I can't even pronounce that. Push that aside, and all of a sudden, only John Smith and Susan Brown are the ones that you're hiring, or you're even interviewing. One, because, well, that person, I can't even pronounce the name. That's an example. I'm just putting it out there. That's a workplace decision. A lot of the HR decisions are impacted by unconscious bias. Or somebody, they have a position that they're posting, and it's like, you know what? I know somebody whose mom works with my mom, and they know someone who'd be perfect for the job. It's like, why would they be perfect? Well, we all went to the same school. We all live in the same neighborhood. We all have, belong to the same country club, whatever. The assumptions are, well, if we live in the same neighborhood, we went to the same school, they must be just like me, and I'm amazing, so they have to be amazing. Does that make sense? Okay. How can victims of unconscious bias begin to heal? I don't think it's up to the victims. And from what I just went through, what I truly believe is everyone needs to go on that learning journey. What happens with the intercultural development continuum, you do a survey and you find out where you're sitting on the continuum. Nobody's sitting exactly in one spot. You're somewhere in between. And then you have to work on your development plan, which is a set of goals to move along the continuum. The victim, to heal, you really do have to, if you need to, seek counseling, see someone, but the persons perpetrating or having that unconscious bias, they need to learn and grow. They need to have their mindset be more complex, where they can see and appreciate people from other cultures, and they can understand that they're going to come with innovative ideas, they're going to come with different perspectives, and that's okay. It is great to have all that difference, because you're going to get so many innovative ideas out of that, and things that you would never have seen otherwise. Do you have a favorite resource or fact around improving sensitivity training? So one fact or for sensitivity training, it isn't one size fits all. You absolutely cannot put everyone in the organization into a room and saying, this is training for you because of whatever given situation. If I've gone through anything, it's if you're in a denial mindset, you're not ready for sensitivity training. You're ready for an international potluck, where you can go around and taste foods from other cultures and find out that, wow, this isn't so bad. If you're in polarization, they cannot do sensitivity training, because again, they will come out feeling actually offended that you would think they need sensitivity training. They're very comfortable and confident in who they are, and really the facts that you're going to tell them, they're going to be so entrenched, you actually might send them the other way. You're trying to deny their culture. It is reverse racism you're going to hear, because they're not ready for that. What you need to do with someone in that mindset is, again, tell the story. Let them see what you have in common. I had 3 girls. They had messy rooms. And it's like, what? I have girls too, and they've got messy rooms. Or whatever the story is, they need to be able to see themselves. Or you do team building exercise that involves just doing a task together, and they build relationship, get to know each other, and then you find out, wow, we do have a lot in common. We're more alike than we are dissimilar, and you move them to minimization. And from there, then you can move them to acceptance. Right now, again, Jesse Unti talked about the country needing to get to acceptance of everything that's happening. A lot of people are not there yet, because their developmental stage or developmental mindset is still sitting in polarization, us versus them, or minimization, and it's going to be actual growth, learnings to get past that and get to acceptance. What advice would you give teachers and parents around raising children with unconscious bias awareness? The best advice is to bring them around others. Make sure if they're in I'd say soccer, I hope we're still doing that with COVID, make sure they have exposure to many different cultures. Take them on a trip, traveling someplace. It could be exotic, or just could be someplace where they've never been, where they can meet other peoples from other cultures. So they're not reduced to just having stereotypes or what they see on TV or what they look at on social media. You need to have them out and about so they can experience others, experience other food, bring them to a festival, Italian festival, Greek festival, Jamaican festival, somewhere that they can hear the music, see the people, try the foods, and just know that this is different than what you're used to, but it is okay. And actually it's pretty amazing. So that's one advice I'd give to teachers and parents. Have the international potluck. Actually doing public health measures, I know everything has to be individually wrapped. Before COVID, it would be amazing when you had an international potluck at work, because people would bring foods from their countries and their cultures. The smells and the taste would be like, wow, this is amazing, I'd like more. If you can go to a wedding with someone from another culture, that's something else that would be just opening your eyes. And so the biases, you can't say, well, all black people are. Again, generalization, judgments are there, and people would be biased against black people because I heard they were all X, which is not true. It's completely wrong. We're individuals. We actually have a lot in common, but we do have differences that should be accepted, should actually be applauded and celebrated. Yeah. Are there any other questions? Okay. If there are no other questions, I'd like to thank everyone for signing on and listening in, participating. Nope, that was the final one. All right. I appreciate the time to be here to speak to you. And no, thank you very much. And I do know this will be recorded.